If I ruled the world, I love 'em, baby.
My father was a legitimate film editor for WOR TV when they were in the Empire State Building in New York.
Channel 9.
As a kid, I remember going into the romper room set and everything else when it was so early. We're talking 69, 70. We're not talking about, like, the 80s,
Right.
But at the same time, as my father and my grandfather were legitimate, film editors, because my grandfather was with WABC TV. My father also had an auto collision tow truck business. Helped contribute to the modern day version of the chop shop, where people,
Shout out to Flushing.
Sure.
By Shea Stadium.
and the 114 precinct. And not only that, he was into the game that a lot of people are into out there on the streets, and that was robbing serious drug dealers.
Yeah.
So he would go in with the Lupara, and his partner would just grab everything up, and out the door they would go. My father looked like an outlaw biker by 1973. Fully sleeved and tattooed with all the big fucking long flowing hair, but he was a cowboy. Even the Italians didn't want him because he was just too fucking wild.
Are you getting him?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of my father rubbed off on me, even though I tried not to, become my dad. But I guess it was almost appropriate because every day my mother was like, "You're just like your fucking father. You're just like your fucking father." Well, now look at me, Ma. So, for a long time, I wanted to be that person. I thought the streets were fucking cool. I really did, and I wanted to live that whole fucking romance and do that. But thankfully, by the time I turned 30 and I realized how my drug problem had such a control over my whole life and my mind that I started making those changes and walking away from it. And it's not easy because a lot of the times it's like the streets call you back, and I'm experiencing that right now as I'm making this significant change in my life.
Right.
I had
Well, let's do this.
Let's do the intro.
Because I don't want you to feel like you're going to repeat yourself, and there's a lot of things I want to get to. So let's start.
Okay, let's
All right.
start. It's number 20, y'all.
Number 20. If I Ruled the World.
Welcome to If I Ruled the World podcast, episode number 20. This is our first episode back after a bit of an unexpected and unplanned break, and we couldn't be happier for who's sitting in my living room right now. We're sitting here with none other than Eddie Sutton. You might know him as Eddie Leeway. What's up, Eddie?
How you guys? And thank you for having me. If I ruled the world, I think most of you would be pretty happy.
We'll get to that
Yeah,
question.
we'll get to that question.
But just for the record, Eddie's one of the good ones because he's done planes, trains, and automobiles to get out here. It was not an easy trip, and we thank you for that, bro.
I'm the nomad. I live the nomadic life. It's all good.
Well, you were all set up. You had a backpack. We got 2 coffees. You got some burritos.
I do this twice
a
a week for my mom. You know what I mean? So it's really not that much of a position. I'm just going to Suffolk County today.
Right.
You know what I mean? And getting to hang out with you guys. So, again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. So let's start off.
That's bullshit.
The sort of the easiest way to start it off is usually to go back to the beginning, way back, and
Which we were getting some of.
yeah, it's one. Eddie's one of those guests that I picked him up from the train and everything was saying in the car. I'm like, shit. I hope we talk about this later. As we're walking from the car to the door, I'm like, shit. I hope we get this later. When we're in the kitchen, I'm like, shit. So we're like, we gotta start this, and I really want to just sort of get the story of your beginning into hardcore. Before getting into a band, you were talking about Queens a little bit.
Well, it's kind of like a tangent, and it does carry through to this, but keep going. I don't want to cut you off.
Nah, everything always comes back to the point with Eddie Sutton, I've noticed.
We were talking about his dad, and what are you saying? So if you want to just go from there.
Yeah, so, my dad was in that life, and it got very chaotic in the household. So by the time I turned 9, my parents were done with each other, and it was quite a fight. And, that whole reality of broken family being a traumatic experience was very true. There was a thing my father told me once I realized he was about to marry and have a second life at 11, you know, he said it to me in, I guess, a loving way. You're now man of the house. But I took that in such a serious fucking way. So every time, like, my mom had a hard time getting through surviving and keeping us fed and everything like that, I took it very personal. Like, I'm the man of the house. I'm supposed to be taking care of this shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Were you like the only child?
No, I was the oldest of 3.
Right.
And I was the only boy in a family surrounded by women, you know. And maybe that's why I'm such a softie for the ladies, you know. And I understand them
One of
better
many
than most
reasons, I'm sure.
dudes. You know, it's a beautiful quality to have. But long story short, you know, we eventually moved back to New York City. We went back to Astoria, where I was born and raised until those several years on Long Island. And up until that time, music, I didn't realize, was such a therapeutic part of my life, because I would be singing along to 70s rock that I was so hooked into as a kid through school, and the music my mom was turning me on to, and whatever I learned from my dad earlier on. I moved back to New York the same fucking night John Lennon was shot and killed.
Holy
December 1st?
It was like December 5th,
December 8th.
1980.
December 8th.
Was it
1980.
Same as Dimebag Darrell's.
1980.
Wow. Yeah, 1980.
And it happened on 1980. I remember that whole experience. And
Just real quickly, Sam, how do you not know that? Sam is like Eddie Trunk, where he knows every fucking stupid trivia question. I don't know.
Yeah,
how you
no,
don't
I
know
missed that one. That definitely.
yeah, well, if we delve
Like
into
Eddie
La Cosa
Trunk.
Nostra, I'm kind of like that. I'm like the Rain Man on the LCN of New York.
Me too.
You know.
I'm Team Vinny the Chin.
But it wasn't that long before I found hardcore, you know, through Ernie and Johnny Steigerwald, who were Gilligan's Revenge and eventually Token Entry, and Ernie's band Gray Area.
Was that when Anthony from Killing Time
He
was
wasn't.
singing?
It was way before Anthony. Way before Anthony. The toss up for Gilligan's Revenge in the beginning was either going to be me or this kid John Pappas, who basically left New York eventually and became a U.S. Marshal.
Okay.
I wrote like Skateboard Insanity, a couple other things, and then I moved on. I was conflicted because, you know, I didn't like just hardcore. I liked
Right.
metal, I liked other rock, and I thought like, oh, well, I'm not a purist. Maybe I'm not supposed to be this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I didn't believe like I can just go buy a pair of Docs and shave my head and become a skinhead tomorrow too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you know that was something that becomes you as a personality. You just don't go shopping one fucking day and get that outfit.
Right.
Especially back then.
No,
Yeah.
because the
That's
kids
get
that
killed.
did that
Yeah.
got their asses handed to them, and they went home barefoot because someone took those fucking boots from them.
What
and
size boots
resold
are
them.
you?
Exactly.
Oh,
Perfect.
Exactly. I know somebody that'll fit in those, and they'll give me $50 for them if I fucking smack them and take them off you right now. And that shit used to happen all the time, you know. So I wasn't gonna be a victim. I was there for the show. I wasn't there to be a fucking Vic, you know.
it's funny how because you mentioned the music that you grew up on, and knowing the music that you do
Yes.
is like, it makes sense. Sometimes someone says their influences, you're like, no kidding. But between the soul, you sing, you know, you don't just yell and scream.
No,
There's
I
a
tried.
soulfulness to
I
it.
tried.
And the metal and the hardcore background, you know, everything you just said.
A little
makes
bit of
sense.
everything. My mom turned me on to R&B. I was a listener of WBLS as early as like 75, 76 when their like, you know, code would even say, you know, the only black radio station, all black radio, you know, and I was listening to Major Harris, Rose Royce, you know, Teddy Kendricks, David Ruffin. The Temptations were already done. Most of those guys were solo artists then. And then at the same time, you know, I'm listening to Led Zeppelin, and by the time the roller disco era came in 78, you know, Van Halen's there, you know, Dance the Night Away, all the early shit, you know. And then I moved back to New York. Lennon gets shot and killed. And then I find this music scene based out of punk rock, which I didn't really have much of an idea of what it was. I really didn't. You know, even though I would hear of, you know, the new wave bands, I was there when Elvis Costello played Saturday Night Live for the first time, as well as all of those other big acts back then. You know, David Bowie on stage with that performance artist Klaus Nomi that a lot of people don't know of. Just a wild time of music where so much different styles and flavors were really starting to challenge each other. And you know, already Malcolm McLaren took the New York Underground and prefabricated it into what everybody in the world thought was punk rock, you know, and marketed it. You know, so all this shit was out there, but I didn't really taste it until the spring, summer of '81, when Ernie and John became friends of mine, and they started turning me on to this, and they started doing their own band, and we started going into the city and slowly started going to shows. My very first show, I remember clearly Gary Miller, Dr. Noah, the Bad Brains, pulling up in a fucking van. Mm-hmm. And at that time, Bad Brains were already God to me. They were the Beatles. They were the modern-day Beatles to me as far as I was fucking concerned. You know, and this guy just pulls up and just starts talking to everybody and anyone. And you know, before that, the only other experiences I had from a rock musician was like trying to see running into like Rod Stewart in the city on my job going, "Hey Rod, how you doing, man? You got an autograph? Can you get time for an autograph?" And he's just like basically giving you that, "Get away, kid, you're bothering me." Right. You know, and he's got no time for you. And I just thought he was such a dick for that. And then like in just a matter of months, you know, I experienced this thing with Gary. You know, and I thought it was just so fucking cool that, you know, you can talk to the musicians, right, and you can hang out. It's not like you have this ticket and you have to be relegated into one seat and you can't reach out and touch anything. Right. You know what I mean? You know, fuck those rules.
That's like the biggest like selling point. You know, I think like for all of us, that's what we remember. Yeah. You know, obviously, and like you said, the Bad Brains back then. Anyone that from like interviews on YouTube, like basically everyone who saw the Bad Brains at that era feel the same way. It's like they were like the gods.
All roads lead to Bad Brains. Yeah. Or a lot of roads lead to Bad Brains for this time and a certain evolution. Somebody goes from one way to another, like through an experience with the Bad Brains, whether you saw them or you met them personally, like you did. It comes up a lot, right?
Yeah,
Sam.
Yeah, it's a more fun game than 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, of course.
You know,
we actually have a game. It's called 6 Degrees to Elmo.
Yeah,
that's another one too.
Yo, shout out to Elmo Blatch and his lovely twins. He's having a nice, quiet evening, being at home, being a daddy to his beautiful twin daughters.
I want to try an experiment one day as someone I don't know, and just be like, "No, I met you once before with Elmo," and see what happens. And I'll probably be like, "Oh yeah, it's fine."
Yeah, because some people just know him as Elmo. A lot of people don't know his name is KF.
Yeah,
you know, which is pretty funny.
But as you were.
As I was. So, you know, who knew 7 years later I'd be on tour with this guy on the Quickness tour, and I would have an album out called Born to Expire. Right. And I was living a fucking dream. You know what I mean? Because there really wasn't that many things I wanted to be in life. You know, I was well-read in school, and it was easy to be on the honor roll. And my fixation and fear of death, you know, I wanted to do something historical, you know, so I thought maybe I'd be a lawyer, maybe become president or a baseball player or some shit like that. You were fixated
with death?
Well, you know, the reality that we leave this world and then it's a fucking wrap. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you only have one life to live. So that really started, you know, grating on me as far as like, you know, what am I going to do with my life?
Do you remember when you came to that realization? Because I remember when I came to that realization. Do you remember how old you were?
I was around 11.
I think I was 10.
Yeah, and it could have been 10 as well. But, you know, I was a late bloomer sexually, too, so, you know.
But it's like such a lonely feeling. Like, I think I remember I was 10 years old. I was watching the movie Miracle Mile. Mm-hmm. And it's about like a nuclear bomb going off. And at 10, I don't know, something just came over me, and I realized that everyone's going to die at 10. and it just bummed me out for like the next 30 years.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. Like it's an unfathomable concept when you're innocent, and it almost like it can steal your innocence. You know, almost similar to some kids who are like, there's really not a Santa Claus. You know what I mean? Like that I knew already. I watched my mom struggle every fucking Christmas to make sure we had everything under the tree, and she did. She made sure. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I knew that whole fallacy about what the fuck Santa Claus was, but you can't get around death, man.
No.
Death is fucking real. It's there. Fucking get used to it, and
I just learned to switch my brain off.
Yeah, a lot of people do that too, but I tried to do all that as I was traumatized by things by life, and I built up a depression, and when I thought I was living it up in life, I didn't realize I was in the beginning throes of medicating a great deal of pain inside me. And because I was masking that pain, everything was great. I was living up a life, you know what I mean? And I was given so many chances and opportunities that I hated myself for a long time after recovery because, let's not kid ourselves, I became a fucking rock and roll cliche. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But right up until 89 and that whole experience and that complete circle I had with Gary Miller was something I'll always hold on to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I cherish him and Daryl Jennifer and the Hudson brothers is like uncles.
Yeah.
You know, however people, you know, used to think HR's crazy and stuff like that, you know what I mean? I've never seen him not lucid, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or, you know, whatever crazy trained show he's putting on for people, because I think it's really his way of keeping people at bay who don't get it, you know what I mean? That's his way of coping with his fame, mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's a lot of theories behind it too. That maybe that is more punk rock than getting up there and doing backflips like everybody expects him to do.
I believe so. I believe so.
And he really does have, you know, progressive. I mean, he did have a brain problem, but you know that he does have. Even maybe by some of his band members think that he had like he was going.
And he probably was. He probably was on some level, but I also think he probably utilized it to kind of give himself peace from a lot of people too. Do you know what I mean? Because they would just rather stay away, and that's just what he was looking for.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he would know how to turn it on and turn it off. And I've seen him pissed off at me too. I remember being in my boy Morgan's house one night, and the whole HR band came to smoke, and you know Morgan was hooking them up. And there was this white girl who was like such a ball-hugging hanger-on from the scene, and somehow she got her claws into HR for a little bit, you know what I mean? And she was just so obnoxious. And I let her know that day, right there in that room. And you know, I didn't realize that HR was in the corner fucking with laser eyes, putting bullets in me, you know what I mean, for basically telling her how it was. Right. You know what I mean? But, you know, those are the moments we had. I think the last time I saw the Bad Brains, I told their manager to go fuck himself, too. So, you know, we've had those moments.
Blame it on white girls. Yeah. That's the last.
I'm not going to blame it on white girls. I'm going to blame it on fuckery, straight up fuckery, you know, because there's just too much fuckery in the world. If we all just fucking pulled it back a notch and tucked it in a bit, there'd be less bullshit going on, you know, in my opinion.
So, like getting into music, what were some of like the influences back then, like for a young Eddie coming up?
Well, if you can't see David Lee Roth in me on some way, then you don't know. You don't know. You know what I mean? But you know, obviously, I didn't want to be a Robert Plant. When you hear an Ozzy Osbourne, he's more of a blues singer. You know, he's aware of his limitations, mm-hmm. but it doesn't stop him from really belting out memorable melodies that everybody wants to sing along to. Right. But, you know, as I grew up with this music, you know, the challenge was to try to sing to anything. If it wasn't R&B or whatever you called metal at that moment, or hard rock or arena rock, soft rock, fuck, show tunes. You know what I mean? At 8 and 9 years old, I'm not trying to be a tough guy, so, you know, I'm singing along to fucking anything.
Right.
You know, I didn't care. You know what I mean? I'm just having fun.
Did you ever get any formal training along
Never,
the way?
never. And I kind of laugh at that for this style of music, too, even though I feel like there's limits because of my smoking, and I would like to put that behind me after so many decades. But it's the blues in my way of trying to interpret life stories that I do musically. Like every song that I ever recorded, whether it's with Leeway, Truth and Rights, or Marauder, the demo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a life story, so it doesn't get old because I'm constantly telling that story to people. And, you know, so the more I felt comfortable as a singer, the more I tried to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, you know, and that's where you got the multi-track harmonizing that really is a one-of-a-kind thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There are a lot of guys that maybe track 2 vocals, but they're not trying to lay 4, 6, 8 and trying to make this whole orchestrated chorus and hook.
Yeah, there's
You
not
know
a lot
what
of
I mean?
harmony coming out of hardcore.
Yeah.
New York hardcore.
No.
Maybe VOD, you know, Bad Brains or whatever,
I
but,
can't
you know.
even think of many, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I
it's
love that
doubles,
challenge.
It's all
you know.
gang vocals, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot, even when bands were a little bit more on the metal side or whatever, Cro-Mags or whatever,
Yeah.
there's like big vocals, doubles, but not harmony.
yeah, no, definitely.
Like Eddie.
I
Was,
love the challenge of it because I think it takes more of a man to actually try to sing and still come off masculine. Like, you know, maybe you'll call Steve Perry a Journey a pussy, right?
I wouldn't.
Send up my love,
Oh,
memories remain. But are you going to call Bob Marley a pussy? I don't want to wait in vain for your love. For the very first time I set my eyes on you, girl. Come on, man. Come on.
Was singing, like, kind of easy for you always?
No, because I still have a challenge reining it in. I tend to try too hard, and then when I'm trying to hit those big notes, I crack them, I beat them. I'm still learning how to breathe. I'm still learning how to be me. But I just think without the lessons or you know, the few little exercises that I do, that, you know, I'm getting better. I feel like I'm doing it better than ever. I'm not the manic person I am up there, like trying to run a mile a minute to give you that energy.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's like, fuck being Jack LaLanne. You know, I'm here to do something else. You know, so the breathing to do the songs and to be melodic and to kind of tell that story, it's a different thing. And for Leeway, it's easy because I've done it so many times. So it's almost instinct. It's
Right.
like, you know, the fundamentals of playing shortstop. It's just so instinctual after a while. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're a real ball player of sorts, and all that practice to become perfect and to become a professional. Let me think.
Like Alvaro Espinosa?
Yeah. Or even how, like, a Mariano Rivera, he didn't even have the tools. He couldn't even get a glove, but they all learned how to make gloves out of milk cartons, and they still played fucking hardball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the human condition when you do stuff like that is like amazing.
Yeah.
Even something like hip hop,
Yeah.
like how hip hop was made. It was just like, okay, can't afford this, can't play this. Like, we're gonna take turntables. Like, once, like, that's like the fascinating part about like human nature.
Yeah.
You know, when you have nothing and you just make something of it.
Well, why do
Right.
we have so many hardcore dudes from the hardcore scene now being hip-hop artists?
Right.
Look at that thing. And it's the same phenomenon. It's the same street community music that, you know, just connects and resonates with people, and it brings them closer.
Right.
And it becomes such a passion in their lives because it's so tangible. Like I said, you can't get that going to the Eagles concert. You're going to just spend $120 on your seat,
Right.
$50 on a fucking flimsy shirt, and you're not even going to be able to go up to Glenn and tell a joke or tell him good set. You know what I mean? Plus he's dead.
Yeah, definitely not
Right,
going to be able to
whatever.
tell them anything.
them twice as many. And from what I understand with Don Henley and the stories I heard, I don't think he wants to be bothered.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's the problem I have with a lot of hardcore musicians nowadays that are strictly in it for the paycheck and don't even respect their audience.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're too busy making fun of them and making snide jokes. But these kids are looking up to you, man. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're a legend in their fucking eyes. And you're talking to them like that and taking their money.
Right.
And to me, you know, you might as well be a fucking street thug. You know what I mean? Just like go out and take kids' money and be a bully. You know, and that's not cool either. All these kids, these teenager, 20-something kids and guys in their mid-30s or 40s are the scene bullies.
Right.
The fuck is wrong with that, too? You know?
Yeah. I'm curious, though. You were talking about there was a moment that you turned into you were talking about Bad Brains, and it was like before you turned into a rock and roll cliche.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious what that is, and is that a departure from what we're talking about right now?
No, a
Or
rock and
what
roll
exactly was
cliche
that?
could be many different things. Like a lot of guys, once they start getting popularity, they really think like it's like God is speaking through them or some
Yeah.
shit, and they can't get their head through the door, and they think they're really changing the world, like they're fucking Bono or some shit, Boner from U2. You know what I mean? And you're not a philanthropist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, you're just a fucking singer in a band.
Right.
You know, but they just start getting so swell-headed. And then there's the other side of that rock and roll cliche coin where, yeah, like you don't even respect your audience, but you'll take that money.
Right.
What my experience as a rock and roll cliche was more the sex, the drugs, and the rock and roll of it.
Right.
You know, being around and with beautiful women, using a street narcotic, heroin, to get a high that would make me want to sleep with that girl. Well, not sleep, you know what I mean. But be
Well,
with that girl
Sometimes if the
all
heroin was
night until your genitals are candy apple raw. You know what I mean?
True story.
And you know, that's what happens to a lot of people with that drug and the narcotic of it and its effect. You know, in the beginning, I just wanted the buzz. I just wanted the life that came with it.
Yeah.
But until I was locked up for the very first time and facing 4 felony charges,
What was that?
that was like 88. It's me, AJ, John Ullman, who was in Warzone at the time, and his kid Huey. And somebody this gay guy propositioned John, and John just flipped out and started beating the shit out of him. You know, we were kind of looking for trouble at the same time, too. You know, we were feeling our oats that night. But John made the mistake of it, you know, saying, "Give me your fucking money, you homo," or some shit like that. And then it just all escalated into, you know, assault, attempted robbery. And then now I have possession of a weapon, you know, possession of an ounce of weed all chopped up for sale. You know, it's just fucking jackpot,
Damn.
you know.
So they got all 4 of you with that charge?
Yeah, but it got let go after a while. The guy didn't want to go through the whole course of the case and shit like that. I guess he figured we learned our lesson. John was a little unstable at the time, and he went away and sought treatment and stuff like that. I think there's a story where him and EK at the time are wrestling in the Warzone van, and John just put him through the windshield. Like, it went from fun and games to like, yo, this isn't cool,
It always does.
you know. So John was gone for a while. But I saw John not too long ago. He's doing some pretty cool things, and he's doing wonderful. And that's always great to see, because not many of us survived this rock and roll cliche.
I mean, is that like, as far as your old band members, being that you're not playing with them, right?
No, I'm not playing with any of them anymore. That's why I call it Leeway NYC. I want
Right.
people to understand it's a new era. It's a new phase. They don't care. I do. And that's why I busted my ass doing it myself and slowly finding the team of players in order to go out and play, because I don't have necessarily 4 guys behind me that are the same guys all the time. Sometimes I'll just go on the road like I did with the band Rhythm of Fear out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
And they're all my boys. They're half my age, you know. And I love working with them. We've cultivated a wonderful working relationship over the last 4 and 5 years. And then I got my home team guys, you know. I got my guy Dank, who plays bass. He plays in Whiplash, too. I've known him over 30 years. Dan Nastasi, you know, we were both pipsqueaks when, he was in Mucky Pup and I was in Leeway, and then he went off to form Dog Eat Dog, and Dog Eat Dog had their own legacy in Europe after winning the MTV Music Awards. So I have some great players behind me, and I mix and match the team to go around their schedules because I want to play out. And as much as I love playing with all these guys, nobody's going to stop me from doing a show.
Right.
And going out and completing my bucket list of cities that I've not been to since I've recovered over the last 23 years and gotten back to where I am. So it's a lot of fun, and it keeps it fresh and new. And each version of the band takes the set very seriously and very hard, and they build it into their own sound and thing. So there isn't one motherfucker out there that can sit there and go, oh, that's not Leeway. Yeah, well, it's not. It's not. But it's the best fucking tribute you're ever going to hear. And every guy behind me deserves to be in that fucking position. You know, once in a while, we may not have a good set, sound, whatever it is. But I'm out there making sure everybody is satisfied and they go home wanting to come back again, even to come back just to hear the same new song, same old songs. But I'm not going to be a fucking nostalgic act. I'm in the process now of writing the new Leeway single with Dan Nastasi, and it'll be out by the fall.
Right. You recording this week?
Yeah, I'm still working with Christian, who's the vocalist of El Nino. He's engineering with me right now, and he's helped me cultivate a very strong song, which is titled I'm Not Your Pusher. And it's about drugs and the way it can affect a relationship when it's a one-sided addiction. Because, you can't help loving somebody and also enabling them, trying to find a way to beat this disease or medical condition. The jury's out on that. Some people don't want to call it a disease. They just call it a medical condition. But for me, it was a lifelong experience where it was somebody I truly cared for, and I made the decision to take her off the streets, seeking that drug every night, and me providing something to slowly wean her off and get her away from that world in life. And, I risked going to jail myself, you know what I mean, by providing that and everything. But I didn't feel like I was a pusher. I felt like I was, somewhat enabling, but for a better cause. And it did work out in the end, and I don't have any regrets for that. But, as much as I have a criminal record from my past, and I did have to plead guilty to selling drugs and stuff like that, I felt that this was the right thing to do. And I saved that girl maybe from a world of violations on the streets, getting hurt, robbed, raped, so many different things. But when you care for somebody, you don't want to see them in that world, and you'll do everything to stop it.
Yeah.
Case in point, Dave Insurgent, the singer from Reagan Youth, he killed himself. He was very strung out, and so was his girlfriend, and she was a prostitute, supporting both their habits. She was a victim of Joel Rifkin's, the serial killer.
Oh, shit.
She was one of the victims that Joel picked up from down on the Lower East Side, took back home to East Meadow and killed. And, Dave lost her after losing his mom, and he couldn't live anymore, so he killed himself. It was very, very traumatic and very painful. So when you care for somebody who's in the throes of this fucking disease, some of us are willing to go to prison to try to stop it, you know, and I was already, you know, past my days out on the street.
Right.
I tried a million detoxes. I tried methadone clinics. Treatment finally worked for me in 95, and I slowly built myself back up and learned why I was doing all these fucking things. You know what I mean? And today, it's 23 years since I stuck a needle in my arm. I'm not a sober man. I love my weed. I really think it helps me. But I also know how to establish support for others. I have my own coping skills. I know it's not where I want to be or ever go back to. And I'm blessed because I'm not a cokehead, I'm not a pillhead, I'm not all these other things. I'm not a heavy drinker.
Right.
So I'm not replacing it with anything.
Right.
Except a little gambling. I can't help the poker. I
was
can't
gonna
help
say,
the sports book.
I replaced it with food.
Yeah. But
So you're the whole time that you were, I guess, kind of fucking around with heroin was like the extent of the Leeway recording.
it was.
Like
I
all
was
4
already
albums?
experienced by it by '86, but I watched my roommate at the throes of the addiction, and all the money I was putting into paying rent, and all the money I was putting into paying the bills, he was putting in his arm.
Yeah.
And he was going tens of $1,000s in debt with the landlord that gave him faith that he was going to make it, and he could have made it. He was one of the greatest guitar players to come out of our scene in New York. But I walked away from it. It was only 2 years later, making crazy money and wanting to experience that feeling again because the girls were around, and I just wanted to, and then I went out one night and I got that drug myself. And after that, I wasn't afraid to go out and get that drug myself from a dangerous hole in the wall with all these scary dudes working it. And I did it again and again and again.
Right.
And eventually I did it every day for 2 months, where I woke up in a fucking jail cell, sick as a dog, going, Houston, we have a problem. And then it just turned into a 6-year odyssey of embarrassments and humiliations and disappointments. But I was relatively functional. You know, AJ and the rest of the guys would love to say it's all my fault shit didn't happen. No, because when I handed the reins over to certain people and it was time for them to make decisions, they would sit on the fence until the opportunity fucking floated away or evaporated. So shit never got done. And that wasn't my fault either.
And this time period is like 90 to 90. You're saying the 6 year
More like
period?
89
to
89
95.
and 95.
So that's the last.
Those are
few
the
records.
last 4. I mean, those are the 4 albums you put out, basically, right?
Well, Born to Expire was recorded in November '87. It wasn't released until January of '89. So that also gives us a time slot to say, you know, we were one of the first. We didn't come after this band or that band. We were right there at the same fucking time. And the musicianship that I had behind me was pretty much unparalleled compared to everybody else in New York.
It really
Next
was.
to the Cro-Mags
Like those, like
and Bad Brains.
that record. Yeah, I kind of agree. Like the musicianship on that record is ridiculous, and you could hear, like it's almost like hardcore meets Anthrax.
And I don't talk to these guys much anymore. We don't have much respect for each other, but we're not laying our laundry out in public for the internet to build a soap opera or any of that nonsensical drama. But I never forget what we did collectively.
Right.
And I respect and honor them for what they did and what we all did together collectively, because, you know, I'm not that much of a dick. You know what I mean? And I do appreciate and I cherish those times.
Right.
But it's just a new time and place, and we're different people.
Right.
I'm willing to talk to my audience. They put their hoodie up and run in the back and do their yoga instead of talking to the audience. That's just the difference between them and me today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Do they play under Leeway or
No,
right?
Pokey plays drums for AF and has been for several years now. And same thing with AJ. He's been a guitar player for the Cro-Mags for well over a decade. I mean, if you notice, they do the intro to Rise and Fall during the Cro-Mags set. You know what I mean? But they don't do the song. John doesn't do the vocals, you know. I remember recording a bit of Malfunction on Scarhead's record, so I've paid them tribute. I would love to see John try my vocals. I'd love to see how people would compare him to me.
Well, that could start a little internet thing. If you know, speak of the.
Well, we all have our challenges.
Yeah.
We all are a little competitive. We all think our thing is strong and we want it to be better than this band or that band. That's what made Leeway very, very renowned. Chris Williamson, who was Rock Hotel and managed both the Cro-Mags and Leeway, would put us in the best supporting positions on all these big shows so we could go up there and steal the fucking show. So like every night, Cro-Mags stealing shows, Leeway stealing shows. And I was a man on a mission, even with the drug problem, because I never promoted drugs in my performance, you know, and my performance was always physical and energetic, even though I was a skinny little shit. And you could easily kick my ass, but you got a kick out of me going up there and, you know, letting it out and giving it a swing, you know.
In those years, like when you were, you know, on those 4 records, like growing up in New York, you were one of the huge bands, especially from a scene. And I saw you in Sundance, I saw you on metal shows, I saw you on hardcore
and everybody
shows.
went past us because we never had the right publicizing.
But that's what I'm curious about. Like, how were you in order to get big back then, you had to cross over to metal. Metal had to accept you to some degree, even Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags, you know, to kind of like just get out of hardcore, get past it a
you have
little
to
bit.
cross over to a bigger audience. You can't rely on just the one genre.
Across the United States, when you doing these tours in the Quickness tour, like, did the metal kids like you? Did they accept
we got
it?
accepted very easily. We would win them over even if it was a little stiff to start out, because it's not easy to open the Bad Brains up.
No.
Everybody's there to see the Bad Brains. It's almost like trying
Slayer.
Well, I was about to say, it's just like trying to open up Slayer. You better go out there and start smacking the shit out of motherfuckers and make that first song a killer.
Right. It's like, oh, we got the Resurrection of Jesus coming on at 10 o'clock. You think you can do a 20-minute set? You know? It's like, fuck, am I going to open for Jesus?
Yeah, how do I open for Jesus? You know, I can't even fucking make a chair, and he's a carpenter. You know what I mean? You know. So we took full advantage of those opportunities, and that's what carried us, because after the Quickness tour, Profile didn't do much with us, and I was very embittered by Profile. So I started robbing Profile records. I just started going in there during the day, stealing anything that wasn't nailed down to go to the record shop and sell it for money.
Right.
You know, and I was like, fuck you, dump me. And it would just fuck things up for the band in a sense, because they wouldn't support us anymore. And then finally by 91 they let us go. So we didn't really have anybody supporting us. So really all we had was whenever we toured, which was mostly Europe. So we built something in Europe with half-ass labels putting out Adult Crash and Open Mouth Kiss.
Right.
And we stayed afloat. And then when the band kind of stopped for a while in 95 and started coming back once in a blue moon over on and off the next 10 years, the legacy remained.
Yeah.
You know, thankfully, because you don't forget the older bands in our music. And there was enough fans that turned on younger fans. And because you have to go to school and study this music once you become a part of it to know what you're fucking talking about.
Right.
You know, we're just like one of those bands that happens to be in that important encyclopedia, and we get enough attention to look at it. Grand Theft Auto 4 did a lot for us with the Enforcer song being on that. You know, so we were able to carry on very well just with our legacy and word of mouth. You know, because Adult Crash wasn't strong. But Open Mouth Kiss was such a different push of the envelope. Like each album always had a different style or offering, and we pushed the envelope and tried something new. That it took several years, but eventually Open Mouth Kiss got all the respect and recognition it properly deserved. And that's the one I'm most proud of.
That record is that's the last record you guys put out, right? Mm-hmm. That record's fucking awesome. Like, it's really, like, the first and the fourth are what I really enjoy. But there's something so New York, like, it just sounds like just from the world of, like, Helmet and Prong, and, like, just, it sounds like dark New York post-hardcore, and I fucking love it. And
that's what was important to me, too, because, you know, as much as we all love this music and we like its general basic of it, as an artist, you know, and it's funny, I call myself an artist sometimes, but
I think we all do sometimes.
But, you know, it's like, in order to really do it and to really offer something to an audience, you have to be doing what you want. I don't believe in these bands, and I know there's bands out there that are writing songs and trying to be something that people will want to jock to or is the flavor of the month, instead of really being themselves. You can tell when you look at a guitar player by the moves that he makes. Oh, he's jocking this one. He wants to be this guy. He wants to be that guy. You know what I mean? You could just tell by his straight edge jump move right there. Isn't that so-and-so? Yeah, that's just like him. He wants to be him so fucking bad. And it's obvious. Instead of doing what this whole ethic base was about in the DIY is get up there and do it yourself, and be an individual. Right. Be yourself. Don't be somebody else. There already is an HR. There already is a John Joseph. There already is an Eddie Leeway. And if you try to be me, you're going to end up killing yourself, because I fucking lucked out through a lot of shit. So if you try to follow my path, cut your wrists. I'm sorry. You need an 800 hotline for suicide prevention, because you're not going to do it.
I have a distinct memory of you. From, I don't know what year it was. It had to be late 80s.
How fucked up was I?
Not at all.
Okay.
It was from a distance.
That's good news. And that's the beautiful thing, too. I cleaned up my act before the internet.
There you go. Well, that's good.
So most of the stories out there are just plain bullshit.
No, it's nothing bad. It's actually on me. Because I remember seeing you at a show, and I was probably just getting into hardcore, so I was probably a little bit more emulating what I saw. Maybe I had boots and braces. Maybe I had a Gorilla Biscuit. I don't remember. But I remember seeing you, and you had that skeleton glow-in-the-dark shirt. So I don't know what year that was.
It could have been 87, 88.
I wasn't.
Maybe a little late.
89 was like my first hardcore shows.
There were pajamas my boy Matty O'Brien had, and I used to just steal them to do shows half the time.
And I said in my head, who's this fucking guy?
Yeah, who's this fucking guy?
Me. I probably just showed up. I'm a couple months into it. It's this fucking guy, right? And then guess who gets up on stage and fucking kills it. His own style, his own thing, and then it's like, oh.
Well, at least you were man enough to admit it. There's a lot of dudes that I thought were whack and were dicks, but then later on, I'm like, that dude's the fucking man. You have to be big. You have to be big to accept that. You know what I mean? Because we're not perfect.
That you didn't look like everybody else was probably Bayshore, was probably Sundance, was probably looking at everybody else and being like, this guy doesn't look like everybody else. What's wrong with him? Yeah. And then I didn't know, like, the singer gets on the stage, and then you played and killed it, and it's like, oh yeah, well, he's not like everybody else. He's the singer. He's doing, a much better.
He's being himself. He's finding a way to be whatever product of the world and life and neighborhood he comes from, but he's also a part of this thing here, doing his thing, and. The music scene was built by misfits and outcasts, kids that were running away from such heavy abuse or pain, or parents that didn't understand them, as well as the other people that just couldn't get along, the sociopaths or that. But everybody found this thing. You could be who you wanted to be. You could dress up and be whatever you wanted to be. Even though you could see who the newbie is by what he's wearing versus who's been down for a while because they're dressed and look the part,
Right.
that type of thing. But it becomes so fascinating, you know what I mean? The slam dancing, the just hanging out, interacting between bands, like that first time you go to CB's and you see how people go outside and talk or act or do whatever they do, and then they go back inside for the band.
Yeah, or just looking across the street, like what's going on over there with the
wow, there's so
deli
many crackheads at the hotel today. You know what I mean?
There's skinheads,
and it's
punks
funny how they used to blend in with us too, with all the winos and everything else. It was like snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. It's supposed to be the other way around, but that's how I think of my life. I've been snatching defeat from the jaws of victory for quite a long time. I think Jerry Nolan used to use that to compare Johnny Thunders, because the real expression is supposed to be snatching victory from the jaws of defeat.
Right. Yeah.
I can't see
I
that.
think it's a common story for bands, right? And band members and artists and musicians who, there's a certain amount of business and all this stuff that has to just get shoved and pushed together to get your band doing something, and like, who the fuck is prepared for that? Number one.
It's a crapshoot.
Secondly, who's prepared on top of that from the hardcore scene or from your circumstance particularly?
Yes.
What you grew up in, and it's like, I mean, hindsight is 20/20 like a motherfucker most often, and it's like you can only figure this out many years later. It's like, how many times was I this close?
And I had to survive, and I had to really put away my ego and my attitude to really reflect at this. And as much as I hated Chris Williamson then, and I loved firing him live on stage at his own show, when Guar was playing that night, so it was a packed house, and they loved it when I said, you know what, Chris, your ass is fired. This is done. And the place went crazy.
Just as a
and Profile too, but they did get us off the ground to give us the opportunity to leave our legacy.
Chris Williamson was
Rock Hotel.
Did he manage your band, or he just?
He managed us in the Chrome Eggs as well. Like John and Harley liked to call him Doug Hennig, because he looked like that illusionist from the 70s, Doug Hennig, who became like a real, Krishna type dude too.
It's a name I've heard batted around, like, not in a good way.
And well, you know what
years.
it was? Like, he was the man. He was the man with the plan. I think he was part of that Studio 54 scene, so he understood promotion. He knew the hustle. He knew the grind. He came to New York from New Hampshire as a pianist protege. And obviously that didn't pan out well for him, did it? But he found this niche, putting on hardcore shows originally at the Jane Street Hotel on the west side of Manhattan, in the more arty or gay area of the west side, where all those big S&M clubs were and everything. And then eventually we moved it to the bigger room, the Ritz, because things just got bigger.
Yeah.
And there was that meld of hardcore and metal at around 85 and 6, where you would have hardcore bands on a metal bill. And all these kids with long hair would go to the show, and they would try to go in the pit and dance, and all of a sudden you'd see one of the big skinheads just grab him by the hair and throw him around like a fucking rag doll. You know what I mean? Just be like, "Give me a motherfucker." Yeah, now go sit down. You know what I mean? Yeah. She was hysterical. I can't help laughing at it, but it was kind of fucked up.
Yeah, in hindsight, pretty bad.
But that's what we were. We were there to get all the fucking anger out of ourselves that we endured all week. And if we didn't go to the show and we didn't, fuck up or fuck somebody up or let it all out and have a good time, somebody would have maybe hurt themselves. Somebody might have been locked up and made a bad choice.
Right.
You know what I mean? And even me, I made incredibly bad choices, and I lived with them for 6 years, wallowing in this fucking depression and feeling sorry for myself and misery, because it's like, all these other bands are popping off. Why ain't I? And it wasn't my fault, and because of my drug problem. The labels sucked too. We just had bad luck. And at the same time, once Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone overdosed on Epic Records, that was it. They're not going to spend $1 million anymore on junkies fronting bands, no matter how talented and how incredible they can be or could be.
Right.
We're just not putting our money into this anymore.
Wow.
It's
So
fucking
that
over.
had an effect?
Yeah, it had an effect. Yeah. It
Interesting.
definitely had an effect.
When you guys went on tour, like, what was the response like in, like, other places besides New York?
It depends. It depends on how much ground we broke. A lot of it helped with the Bad Brains, so, people remembered that. When we went to Europe, early on, they appreciated this thing so much that they were just happy that you were willing to cross the ocean and perform for them. So, like, before the English started becoming more fluent and stuff, a lot of them who even volunteered their time to work the show would be trying to explain to you, I do this for rock and roll.
Yeah.
And then the average asshole would not see the endearment in that. You know what I mean? But really what they're saying is music speaks to me and is such an important part that's why I'm here. I'm here for all this. There's a much bigger paragraph there. He just can't speak it in your language.
Yeah, it's super
And you're
genuine.
a dumb American, so you're not speaking German or French,
You only speak American.
So, you have to read between the lines of that, and there's a much bigger explanation. That person just cannot explain it to you. And Europe embraced us when we really had nothing out here, and it helped keep things going. It gave me hope at a time where I was struggling very hard with this addiction, hoping that I could get past it and really make something happen. Because at that point, I wanted to succeed in this thing and get recognized, there's no question. But I wasn't willing to sell out,
Right.
If I wanted to be a rock star, I could have joined the boy band.
Right.
You know what I mean? But instead I chose to hold this on and maintain this identity and hopefully someday grow from it. It took much longer for me to recover, only because after I recovered from the drugs and I was ready to go solo when I broke up Leeway for the first time, I broke my neck.
What year was that?
That was 2006.
Damn.
Yeah, long story short, I could explain it, but I almost killed a man with an X-Acto knife. I was facing serious bail, and because of the corrections officers, COs, taunting and fucking with me, I snapped and broke my neck trying to get at a corrections officer by running my head through the plexiglass screen that was on the bullpen door. Because in Essex County, New Jersey, they have these super long corridor-like bullpens with just benches all across the side. So it's almost like you could put 40 to 50 arrestees on one side and the other, because it's just such a long bullpen. One side had bars, the other side where they were doing your paperwork and your prints and everything else was where all the COs were, behind a door with the little plexiglass window for them to look in. And this one guy just kept fucking with me, and I told the medical staff that I felt like I was going to lose it and either hurt myself or hurt somebody else. And they didn't take me seriously. And then when that CO looked back into the window and just gave me that fucking grin, trying to get under my skin, he won. But I didn't just get up and yell. I just snapped, and I ran basically a 30 to 40 foot dash to the door, and literally with all the momentum that I had in my sprint, tried to put my head through that plexiglass partition, and I succeeded. But at the same time, I severely broke my neck.
Wow, damn.
I went down, my left leg starts shaking, and I'm having a hard time moving, and you just see this black kid. You hear this black kid going, "Yo, look at that nigga's neck bubble up."
Oh, no.
And, of course, it's not that moment where you...
Eddie's like, "What'd you call me?"
And no, I'm just sitting there twitching my leg like, I'm Robert Klein in that old shtick song that he used to do in comedy acts. I can't stop my leg, you know, and I'm just
nice
twitching
Robert
like
Klein
a
drop.
motherfucker.
It's a timely reference.
I can't wait to hashtag him later.
Yeah, somebody's gonna go, "Who's Robert Klein?"
Not in this audience.
You could ask your grandparents.
They know.
They know.
And Eddie,
Holy shit.
I was really, really glad to hear from you that you're going to be writing this stuff down, or you are in the process of writing this stuff down.
Yes.
To maybe do a book, because not only you a great guest, because every story is not just like, why'd you get arrested?
Yeah.
I had a DWI. No, it's all of Leeway. There's always like 6 tangents. Like, I broke my neck. How'd you break your neck? I fell down. No, it's, well, here's what happened. I was in jail, and it is like 6 or 7 stories.
And
So
I didn't
your
even
book-
complete it, but yeah, I'm hoping to have this autobiography announced before the year is over and have the publishing date for 2019. It's something that, you know, I figure everybody else is doing it. I think I have a story that could help others. Now, when I broke my neck, I didn't really lose spinal fluid, but I destroyed the numbers C5 and C7 vertebrae.
I don't know what that
And-
is, but that sounds painful.
And I didn't know the procedure even though you know, until later. But what they had to do is remove those 2 vertebrae from my neck, harvest the same vertebrae from a cadaver, and then transplant them into me with a metal hinge right behind my esophagus. And I had to wear a halo for 3 months, which is basically that steel circle bored and screwed into your skull from 4 different points, 2 behind your ear and 2 on the left and right of your forehead.
We're gonna pick it up right here. We're just gonna take a break.
Okay,
We're gonna listen to a Leeway song, and we'll be right back.
perfect. And we're back!
So you were telling us about the halo after you smashed your head on the prison, on the jail.
So after that surgery, you know, I remember the doctor telling me, Mr. Pomponia, well, you broke your neck in 2 different places. And I'm like, oh, that's fucking wonderful. Real great. And then he tried explaining the procedure, and like I said, they removed the 2 vertebrae from me. They harvested the same exact bones from a cadaver and transplanted them into me with a piece of metal to hinge them. And this is all right behind my esophagus. I like to kid around even after having to wear the halo for 3 months afterwards, because it's not just the posts and the halo keeping your neck and head rigid. It's a whole chest thing. You can't shower, you can't bathe, you know. I had to sleep sitting up for 7-8 weeks. Can you imagine that shit?
No.
But
No.
I gained superpowers, you know. I'm more death metal than all of Scandinavia and Florida now, you know, which is a beautiful thing, you know.
Did it affect your singing in any way?
It took a while to really reestablish a lot of the things, but I think because I lived so much fucking, you know, traumatic and painful shit that I've earned the blues, you know what I mean? And I know how to just emote that, and I get enough people to want to come out and hear and see that at night, you know what I mean? I don't take this for granted, but I don't think that I'm doing anything special. I'm just putting on a positive memory and tribute for people, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to tell my story. You know what I mean? So I want to do that for as long as I can, and I'm blessed that all the health issues that I have endured, knock on wood, have not beaten me yet. And at 53, I'm just as good as half of these motherfuckers half my age. They still are trying to catch up to me.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you're phoning it in. I've
No.
watched a lot of your,
No, there's no
the recent shows
emails.
on YouTube.
There's no phoning in shit. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter whether there's 8 kids in there or 800. It doesn't matter to me.
And you're going to be on This Is Hardcore Fest next week, so that's
The big B-boy party, yeah. For the first time, Doggy Dog and Leeway are gonna play together. You know, those names and those songs are gonna be together. It's gonna be the kickoff of a great weekend. I love This Is Hardcore. I actually call it the big dance. It's the big dance of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is, to me, the biggest fest out of all of them in America.
Yeah,
You know,
it
even
has
if
to be.
there's a bigger draw at Sound and Fury or wherever and however they do it, you know what I mean? This is the big fucking dance.
Right.
And Joe and Chris do a great job every year with it. And I'm honored to be a part of it a second time, because last year they allowed both Leeway NYC and Truth and Rights to be on This Is Hardcore.
Right.
And now I get to do at least the kickoff night and get to spend the whole weekend there with my brand new baby.
When you do the Leeway NYC sets, do you like pick from all 4 albums?
No, we're sticking right now strictly mainly to Born to Expire and Desperate Measures. They're good storyboard tales. You know what I really like to do is delve into acoustic shows, and that's where I think Open Mouth Kiss would sound phenomenal, with a couple of good players behind me and doing a very, acoustic set. I like the challenge of trying to sing those songs more.
Yeah, because those, like, on that record, I felt like I think you tried, like, it was almost like you had something to prove on that album. Like, your vocals were like, you were doing some crazy shit on that.
There's a lot of things I wanted to do as, outside of Leeway at that time. So, I really wanted to push the envelope even further. I wanted to be like, all right, you've heard me over 3 records, and even though Adult Crash wasn't strong fully as the others, songs like 3 Wishes were great, well-composed songs, you know what I mean, with very solid hooks and vocals, Wuthering Heights, so I wanted to take it to another level and bring a whole new variety and go to a rock-esque type of a place, somewhat R&B in some other places, even just an alternative sound, and then go hard with like Hornet's Nest and stuff like that, and just still bring a whole new energy, atmosphere, and the same pair of balls.
Yeah. So it like you said, at 53, like, you go out and you do, like, let's say the Born to Expire songs, like, do you find it a little bit hard to do it now, or not so much?
No, it's. I know the story's better now, because as I've gotten older, I haven't lost a step in the performance. I'm more controlled. I think I do a better performance, but I understand my journey and I understand these stories more, and it's a challenge to bring them back, but then also add a little more to the vocals and try a little harder and make it fresh and even a little more like brand new if I can, even though you're doing it. There's just the way how a good artist can play their hit, but, improvise a little bit more and make a little more heartfelt or appreciative.
And I think, like, 30 years later now, I think, like, a lot of people cite that record as, like, a huge influence. So, I mean, you probably see, like, a whole bunch of, like, younger generation kids that, like, probably just picked it up last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and, like, that record lives on.
If you can't appreciate having a fan that's younger than your songs, then hang it the fuck up. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that just doesn't get old. To know that there is not a generational gap between me at 53 and then these kids who can not just be my children, they could be my fucking grandkids, and I'm kicking it with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not like some crazy old guy that they're bemused by, but you know, like really, really kicking it and getting together. To have like a 23-year-old kid come up to me and tell me how this music helped him through meth addiction or something like that, it means the world to me to know that I can help somebody like that. You know what I mean? Even if it was only one person after 30 years of this shit that said that to me, it would be worth it. You know? That's just about giving back when
You're
you
supposed
recover
to
from this.
just like get new fans. That's how everything moves on, you know.
Right.
Like it can't.
These
Like,
kids
it can't die.
These kids gotta fucking know it's not about the bands. It's about them. They're the ones that make this shit happen. Really, you know, all the bands walk in with the ego and everything else because you love it and you emulate it. But if you guys weren't giving them the respect that you gave them, they'd be fucking nothing. You know what I mean? So if a band does come to town and they don't have the time of day to kick it with you or show you their appreciation and respect, what the fuck are you doing there?
Eddie Sutton sounds like he has a lot of gratitude in 2018.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
It's interesting too because we've met, but we don't know each other.
Yeah.
But you know, we had a few instances.
But we're
where
more
we've met.
friends than the acquaintances of friends on Facebook. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we've had dialogue before.
Right.
We have a very close friend, mutual, and all those things.
But what I'm getting for you, like, just even, I read interviews in preparation for this, and then also, we've been texting and writing on Instagram and stuff like that, and just so that's stuff that's between you and I, and it's offline, and everything about what you're doing is not getting the band back together for like laughs and it's poker night with my buddies. No. It's so much more.
And I'm not
purposeful.
Interested in a Leeway reunion either.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
not
like
interested in
it
that.
almost. I mean,
sorry, gang.
I'm getting that it's like it's more purposeful than it's been in a long time. It's not like to cash in.
It's working.
Now.
It's working because
it's not even just for laughs. Like everything, almost all the messages I have and the interviews I've read, and even driving here, you're very much like about a message to everything you've been through to get that information to somebody else.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a mission for the better closure than it could have been, and it is a mission to get my story and the energy and gratitude that I have right now for this. This is one of the only things I really got right in life from beginning to end, despite all the fuckery in the middle of it and even the mistakes or bad choices we all collectively made as the band. But I'm happy because I'm with friends that respect me. Not a bunch of guys that I did this with for years that I lost friendship with that just like to remind me of where I once was, and it's not even about who I am today. Who wants to fucking work with that? I don't care how great of a musician you are. I don't want to be in a fucking van with you.
Right.
I don't want to tour with you. You know what I mean? And they don't want to tour with me, so it's mutually good. And so I go out with my friends. They believe in it, they respect it, they work very hard at it, and they want to be part of the team. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be a boss, even though, I get to be in charge and I make the decisions. And even if I fuck up, at least I can be sound with it because I made the decision. I didn't allow someone else to make the decision for me and fuck it up. Because that's what was happening too. The others that was supposed to be of sound mind and conscious was supposed to take care of business, and they didn't. And look at me. They all thought I couldn't get this far. You know what I mean? They all didn't think I was going to get this far because they just remember a person from 23 years ago. They don't even know who this guy is right now. And boy, am I proving them all fucking wrong. And there's a whole new bag of tricks and a whole new fucking thing coming after this year, You
said you got a new band, right?
Well, Truth and Rights is a project that I've worked on very hard, and Truth and Rights is what got me back into doing Leeway, because it was a project I started right away after breaking my neck with the guys from Agents of Man. And, we wrote a lot of good stuff, and we have a full-length CD called Lies and Slights. The reason I chose the name Truth and Rights was because trying to come up with a name, I was talking to somebody, and he just made the point that, musically, the way you wrote songs and the songs that people understood and the songs that resonated with them, those were lyrically Truth and Rights. And, Truth and Rights is a style of reggae, like there's Lovers Rock and dubs or roots rock reggae, all those, there's so many different styles. So Truth and Rights doesn't really work well as a Google engine name. And it's a very quiet project that I released on my own label because I got tired of these one-guy labels that are walking around acting like a label. You're a record label? Okay, then I'm a fucking record label now. How about that? How about that? I'm a record label now, motherfucker. Yeah, you think you have reality? No. How about my reality? My reality is I got a record label now. What's up? Fuck.
Have you only been in 2 bands?
Well, I was in Marauder for a minute, and that could have been great. I said, if you guys learn how to spell your name right, I might stay. No, it was a joke. I used to fuck Saab with that. It's, I'm not being a dick, But yeah, man, I'll stick around if you guys fucking learn how to spell. No,
well, that's a challenge.
It wasn't the guys in the band, but they had to save face and say they kicked me out. The reason I didn't do that Marauder album was because of Century Media. Mm-hmm. They had such a deal, and they had Marauder by the balls for this last record, that when they heard the demo, I already spent money reading their contract and looking at that, diagnosis of cancer, and so I wanted to be compensated for what I spent on that fee, and at least be respected if I was going to do this album. They not only did not want to reimburse me for that monies, but they expected me to sign away half my publishing for nothing at that time. And at that time, the publishing meant everything. Still does, kids. But I was so appalled by that, I made sure the message went back. And this is what I told them. You should get under my scrotum and catch my ejaculate if you think I'm going to sign that deal. And ever since then, I couldn't stand them. They still owe me money from fucking Shadows Falls version of Market a Squealer.
Oh, I never heard
that's
that.
That's this game. That's this game that's played on artists and things like that. And we're not supposed to be bitter and angry. You know what I mean? The problem is so many people do this for a hobby now and are only half-ass committed. They're not willing to jump in head first like Pete Rose to win an all-star game. You know what I mean? They try to do a pussy slide to the
Century
side.
Media
Century
owns you
Media
money for Shadows Fall. Is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
because Shadows Fall did a version of Market a Squealer, and I never got my proper royalties for that.
But isn't that, if they owe you, can you just legally get it?
Yeah,
Like, it's
and so I send a lawyer
complicated.
in to go get them. You know what happens? The lawyer bill becomes more money than what
right,
they
yeah.
owe me. That's how they get you. That's how they fucking use you. You know what I mean? Because it's
Brian,
all like that.
especially the
Come on, man! You didn't
they're not
see
making a lot of money
You didn't see the Don
necessarily.
King story. Don King used to play the same game.
yeah.
Man.
Can't Brian just send you a piece of one of his dreads? And
Well, I thought about
And
that.
it's hard to square away like
I
exactly
thought
how
about
much
that,
money's
you know,
made off of a cover.
So I was very pissed off at him because I reached out to the other guys when I complained about this, and they all answered me, but he was a ghost. So yeah, part of me has fantasized about yanking a couple of those dreads and chopping them up into 1-inch little samples and selling it on fucking eBay.
for the record, I meant just like,
Yeah, but
willingly.
I'm dead serious.
willingly, Brian, like,
I'm dead fucking serious. It's
I know
crossed
you
my
are.
mind.
I just meant willingly cut it off.
He should. Kind of like the Yakuza, when they go bad, they have to fucking take their old pinky off.
So does all this like chaos and because I know like
It fuels me.
It fuels you, right?
I'm shit gets to me. I get bitter and shit like that at times, but I'm still doing it, and I'm still getting love and respect, and that's really what matters. These are just the lessons you have to learn, so you don't fucking get screwed again. fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You know what I mean? So you have to just learn from these mistakes. I didn't take a higher education in fucking record industry fuckery. You know what I mean? I had to just dive in and go for it and learn. You know, like anything else in life, I picked up a book and I learned about it and went through the motions and did it. You know, I didn't spend 4 years in school to tippy-toe around anything that I fucking do in life.
It's so weird, too, the music industry. I feel like there's so many people involved that don't know what they're doing, that the few who do, if they're fucked up, can do really well. If you do know what you're doing, you can, do well with bands and really just try and take a band and really get them paid and move through the whole thing. But if you don't, if you're like fucked up a little bit, and I'm sure the music industry sort of attracts those types of people too, you can just do a lot of damage. But there's a lot of damage done by people who just, with the best of intentions, don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
It's a complicated business. I mean, each record contract you get is so fucking complicated. Each
It's the common definition of capitalism and subservitude. My friend's dad, who was in Leeway but didn't want him to sign the contract, great kid Gordon, he's now one of my 2 managers. And he did a lot. His father, Joe Ansis, was actually Rodney Dangerfield's best friend and the one that encouraged Rodney to become what Rodney Dangerfield became. And I remember the conversation we had plain to this day where he just explained, by signing this record contract, this standard contract, and I was signing the same deal as Run DMC signed, the exact fucking deal, just digits were different as far as production budget. You are now a prostitute. You are going to be signed for a rate, and you are going to be exploited as far as they can exploit you. And that's what they did.
Because even like those budgets you have to make back before you're in the green.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily make it back. Yes, it's recuperable, but if you don't sell it, you don't sell it. But it doesn't matter. Even if you start selling records, I won't say what label, but every label does it, so I'm not going to point one out. What they're going to do is they're going to come up with this magic creative accounting of paperwork saying, oh, well, you sold more than the budget, but we spent all this promoting you.
Yeah, it's decisions that aren't made by you. They're saying we spent all this money promoting you, and you didn't even really have a say over it.
We set up this great party for you. We got you a limo. Right. We got you this whole spread. And then you don't realize 6 months later that the whole party is on you.
I had a record label contract explained to me by a lawyer, and he was like, "This is the way it is." He was a music industry lawyer. He's like, first record is for them, second record's kind of for them, third record is yours. And what happens is if you blow up, you say you're not going to go into the studio, they'll renegotiate the contract, and then but if you don't, you really didn't lose anything. I'm like, how is this a business plan?
Yeah.
How does this,
Do you think
with
that's
music,
why everything crumbled?
Music is filled with people who feel like they should be giving everyone the best, they're artists, we want to treat people fairly. That's usually the way this feels, art and creative people. But music, those record label contracts are just notoriously just so bad, and it's also you're kind of giving it to people who are just like, hey, I'm 20, I don't care, and you kind of know that when you give them the contracts.
Because if one of my bands hit and I was 20, I would probably be the same way. It's I'm going on tour.
Of course,
I'm just somewhere in a bus, I'm playing, and it's I get $100 today or something.
But it's a long-term thing. How does that make any sense to because the record label is going to waste money too. It's just built on a weird business plan. Well, we know 90% of the bands are going to fail, and these 10% will fund the other one. And it's but doesn't that just make it chaos forever?
Pretty much. That's why it fell apart.
Naive,
and that's why once internet downloading came in, they've been trying to redesign the wheel just to fucking cheat and steal again.
But it was never a good business plan.
No, it was never a good business plan. It was always like that.
It might be a better business plan now.
Yeah,
because
not
it's
for
not
the art.
7 record deals.
It
It's
depends on how it's done, but it can be more complicated, and the royalty rates are so much smaller today per hit, per unit sold, whatever.
But less
that-
people are walking in with thinking they're going
less
to
people
be
are buying
rich.
it. So it's like it's just so much harder. That's why the only way to really do it in finance and keep your guys happy and keep them in it is to be doing what I'm doing, and that's just playing shows, getting what you get, hitting everybody off, and keep going. It's not about getting paid at that one show. It's doing enough shows over the year in order to generate what you need to keep going. I can never get ahead to build the merch line the way I want to do it as far as budgeting for releases and everything else, but that's why I started my own label in a way, because I would rather just promote it and push it myself and generate whatever I can on these small, insignificant collections, so I can keep putting it back into the band.
Yeah.
And I can keep doing this. It's as simple as that.
Before I forget, and before we end this, obviously, tell us what made you start a podcast.
The podcast was because, I felt after I made this decision to walk away from one of AJ's reissue deals, that's why I had this problem with that Reality Records in Belgium. I wanted to try to, just give my industry wisdom and talk shit, and I don't even care if you think I'm fucking snitching, but people need to know this shit. If you're gonna be in a fucking band, take advantage of the knowledge and don't be a fucking sucker. You know what I mean? Because knowledge is power, and however you get it, you should take advantage of it. And that's what I've done for the last, 25 years, is I've tried to come out of this fucking hole I was in for so long. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, once I had my mind and strength back, I broke my neck and then had to relearn to sing and do all that all over again and everything else. But it's a satisfying journey because I've reached the summit and there is a little bit more I can climb before I can say, okay, let me try something else now. Because life, the winners in life are the ones that keep getting up after they fall down. They finish the race. That's all it is, man. You just have to keep getting up. You have to just keep fucking going. Doesn't matter how many times you fuck up. You can still finish that race,
I'm hearing that Rocky quote where it's like, doesn't matter how many times you get hit.
Yeah.
You got to keep getting whatever it is. You know what I mean.
Well, it is kind of true. It really is. If you keep going, if you're lucky to stay alive as long as I did and keep going, you can see some things through and feel like I did something. I did something with this life.
Right.
And the music is still there, the love for it, like the shows, like you still, end up in like somewhere like the Midwest and you still get like that fucking feeling when you get up on there.
It's now permeated because it's gone through so many generations that before we leave the town the next day or when we're having breakfast in a new town, we'll be in a Home Foods or we'll be in a good restaurant and one of the fans is there already. Like, hey, yo, I caught you guys last night, or I'm going to be at the show tonight. Boom, boom, boom. So it's a nice feeling because when you're traveling through the country, it can feel very lonely at times. Life can feel hostile when you don't have somebody that there's a commonality with. You know what I mean? So whether it's, going out and running into these people in every city, state, or country, or meeting a new cat or dog crashing at somebody's house, man, it's always just fun and exciting. It's just a great way to go through the day. And then you come into town and you do your gig and then you do your thing, and you go home to somebody special, and it's not a bad way to live. It really is.
It sounds pretty okay.
Yeah. Great way to live.
Might have to join you on the next tour.
And so It's criminal if you don't do a podcast, so I hope you start that up.
I will.
again.
If you guys want to help me, we can make something. We could cross-pollinate and try to really make something. We could kind of prop each other up.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely more
Yeah.
for down
And if
for
you
that.
need help with how to do a podcast, Sam has encyclopedia knowledge of that.
And only because I had no idea how to do it, and I fucking ripped.
You had to learn.
I ripped
Yeah.
my hair out for about 2 months because I have this show and another show, and like now I could almost.
You can't.
do it
You
myself.
can't wait for everybody else to come around to do what you need done. Sometimes you just have to do it. Obviously to make what I want to make happen, I need a team, and I've been slowly building that team. And then there's guys that have been part of that team that I've known for 30 years, and then they just reveal themselves out of nowhere how full of shit they are, and I got to cut them and replace them. It's a challenge to really make that team work, and I've been slowly putting that together again for the last 2 years because I need that support in
Right.
order to do. I can't do this myself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
As far as like the technical or just like the
Just
actual
everything
show?
in general,
Everything?
man. Maintaining the merch line, rehearsals, financing the next single, making sure everybody can do this tour and I don't have to worry about this or that.
Is
you know?
that this? This is like the first new song, like I guess under Leeway NYC, right?
It'll be the very first Leeway music since the band put out Open Mouth Kiss and did those few cover songs like the Smiths when we did the last of the International Playboys. You can find that on YouTube, or the song from the Zero Boys, Civilization Dying. These were like Leeway's very, very last recordings after or just before Open Mouth Kiss. So as far as anything under Leeway, that's what it is. And these will be the first songs in 20 to 23 years. Have I put anything new out since? Yes, the Truth and Rights CD. You can find me on Instagram with the simple tag Eddie_Leeway. Send an email or message request. I reply to everybody. It just takes love and respect. No, as long as you're not being a dick, there's no reason for me not to reply. And if you want to get a hold of the CD and you want to check it out, talk to me. I sell it word of mouth. It's at the merch table, or you got to find me. I'm not really interested in wasting my time with distribution, everything like that. That's more important for the Leeway stuff right now. But I'm proud of this CD, and if somebody who really wants to hear it can come get it, And you guys have a copy tonight.
Awesome.
Quick thing, because we talk about podcasts, book next year, new music, different bands, playing live shows. There's one thing you mentioned to me, and if I'm not supposed to bring it up, we can cut it out.
Okay.
But when we were driving here, you mentioned possibly comedy.
Yes, I would definitely want to pursue stand-up comedy. We're even thinking of the idea of working into doing a one-man show, even of sorts, because I think once I get this autobiography out, it's a great way to promote that vehicle, and bring these stories to a more live setting. I think it would be a lot of fun. And then just going up there, like I said, to talk shit and get laughs, you know what I mean? If I could have 5 minutes like that and have another outlet to run my fucking mouth, that'll be beautiful.
You run it good on that the episodes of that podcast.
Well, thank you. And we did have me and Doc Ock we did have a good rapport and everything like that. It's just very difficult for all of us to get together.
Right.
And I hate, not being able to utilize that opportunity, because it's probably the best piece of fucking advertising I could have right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're a front man, and that's like, it's not easy to do public speaking. It's not easy to formulate a story, and it's even harder when there's a band behind you, and it's even harder between two songs, right? So that's a little bit of a training that a lot of people don't have. And if you're trying to say, well, I want to do these stories as a one-man show, something with comedy, and put a punchline to it, you might be further ahead than an average person who's just getting
honestly,
up to do it.
As deep as I like to get sometimes, I can't help poking fun at myself. That's why I think like a one-man show in comedy is the perfect outlet.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into spoken word. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to be that fucking pessimistic dude, not a pretentious dude. I'm not going to talk to you like this and let your faith be bigger than your fear. Because sometimes
They're missing out on the facial
that
expression.
shit is just so fucking ridiculous. I cannot stand it. So when I see that going on, I mean, like, Henry Rollins does a fairly decent job of it, and
Yeah.
he's made a
Great
great
job,
career for
yeah.
him. You know what I mean? But there can be more Henrys.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe not as popular, but maybe more real or just as interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he gets up and talks about his life and what he did, and that's it.
And
It's
if
a-
you're
it's
somebody
the-
like me who's living the life he wants to be, whether I want to be a lazy fuck today, or I wanna finish this single that I'm
Yeah.
on now, or I want to go out and do shows, I do it, and I don't care, what I have to go without to be this. When I lost everything 12 years ago, when I broke my neck and I was just financially flat, I was just like, fuck it, just live for the day. You could still always plan and hope future, but just live for the fucking moment, man.
Yeah.
Because right now you can see right here, you might not have moments, because not only could I have ended up a cripple, I could have been in Rahway for 7 to 12 years for stabbing a guy in the taint and severing his femoral artery.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there. A taint's a taint. It deserves to get cut. No, come on. It was fucked up. It was very fucked up. I lived to regret it, even though at that moment, he sure as hell deserved it as far as my heart was concerned. You know what I mean? But, because of a bad choice in a split second can fucking quite possibly take your life. It's
they
taken a
wake
while
up-
for that clarity to come, because my drug addiction came from something where that gave me a dope dick and got to be a young man, and turned into me where I felt like I was so beat down from life that I just wanted to use the drug and sleep away all day. So I went from two extremes of agony and ecstasy within this disease or condition. And over the years, I've been able to just rebuild a clarity that life is sweet, and it could be sweeter if you live in the moment and stay hopeful for a future. I don't care about the security side of life. I just want to live it now, because I don't know what's left.
Yeah, well, that's that living in the moment. I mean, you really, from everything I've heard, I mean, you're a storyteller. I mean, whether you're doing lyrics,
I'm a
whether
hell
you're
of a
doing
bullshit artist, baby.
a
That's what I am.
podcast, whether you're doing new bands, whether you're going to do a book, whether you're going to do comedy, this is what you do.
Well, hey, I've been on a mic for 30 years in a band. If I could get paid running my mouth too, and make you laugh, but maybe leave you with something thoughtful that can maybe give you something, that's cool.
Well,
That's
maybe
fucking
it's
cool.
the Eddie Sutton Field of Dreams. Speak it, and they will listen.
If you talk shit, they will hear.
So we have one more question, right?
Sure.
Sure. We haven't asked this in a minute. It's nice to be back. The name of the show is If I Rule the World. So every time we have a guest on, we like to ask them. So today, Eddie, Mr. Eddie Leeway, if you ruled the world, what would it look like?
I don't know what it would look like, but there would be less haters. There'd be less crowd killers. There'd be less knuckleheads. There'd be more fucking passion. Maybe a little extra hope than most have at times. And just like a less filling beer, less bullshit.
It tastes great.
That's it. More 70s R&B, more melody.
The beer will pour, must be something more somehow. So tonight, If I Ruled the World podcast. Good night, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing it.
Blast.
This was fun. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, brother.
If I